Sure. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Quantum Sparks program this week. This week, we're going to talk about the language of energy, and we're going to talk about reading resonance and dissonance. What inspired me to do this week's Quantum Sparks, I think some of you may have seen the new television commercial for Apple with Garrett the cat,
Yeah.
where changes out the photo of Garrett. Anyways, I love the energy, and that's not what the commercial is about, but you can just feel the energy of all the main characters in the Garrett the cat commercial, including the guy, the girl, and the cat. So I thought, what a great topic for today's program, the language of energy, reading resonance and dissonance. So we'll start today. Knowledge is only potential. Knowledge doesn't become power until you execute on it. So make sure you have a pen and paper available so you can execute on everything we speak of today. So Leon Festinger said, the holding of two or more inconsistent cognitions arouses the state of cognitive dissonance, which is experienced as uncomfortable tension. So in real estate, success isn't just about contracts and comps and closing dates. It is about connection. Every client meeting is an exchange of energy, and that energy is either in resonance, where trust and rapport flow naturally, or it's dissonance, where something feels slightly off. Most agents focus on the words they say, but it's the frequency behind those words that determines whether a client leans in or pulls away. The agent who can master reading and retuning that frequency gains an invisible edge. They can sense when the energy shifts, adapt in the moment, and restore alignment before the deal is at risk. Today, we're going to explore how to detect those subtle shifts, understand what's causing them, and develop strategies to bring every conversation back into harmony. You guys know what I'm talking about. You've been on an appointment. Maybe it's a listing presentation or a buyer you're working with, and all of a sudden you just feel like something has shifted, that either trust was lost or something. You know, you can feel it. Well, that is because energy speaks to us. Energy is the first thing people feel when they encounter you before they interpret your words. So energy shapes every interaction we have. We sense frequency before we even speak to someone. And our awareness around paying attention to those feelings we have helps us to do more business and better business with people who we are consciously aligned with. Energy is honest. So what's great about energy, that's why sometimes you will go on an appointment and all the words sound right. Like everything sounds the way it should. They say they like you. They say they're going to list their property with you, but you feel something. You feel something is not quite right, only to find out a few days later, they send you an email that they've decided to go in a different direction. I've had this happen to agents over the years where they'll send me something and the client will even say, we've decided not to sell our house right now because they don't want to hurt the feelings of the real estate agent, yet they do go sell their house. And oftentimes the agent detects it while they're still at the appointment. So, while words can mislead people and appearances may deceive, the frequency and the energy is always going to tell the real story. We live in a sea of energy. So these channels of perception are always active. You just have to train yourself to be super cognizant of the energy when you're with people. Every person, every place, every word, and every moment has a frequency. And these frequencies speak to us through feelings we have, images, sounds, sensations, pauses. So, like I said, you could be on an appointment and all the words sound right, but you just feel something is off. So let's talk about resonance and dissonance. Resonance, in physics, resonance is vibration matching. So in life, this is when you're on the same frequency, your frequency matches. So you go on an appointment, everything, you feel like you're vibing with this person, it feels really good. This is typically resonance. Frequencies align and amplify. It feels like harmony. It feels like ease of connection. It just feels right. But then there's dissonance. Dissonance is not a bad thing. It's not that one party has a bad energy at all. It's just a signal. Dissonance is a signal that something is off. It's a signal that's telling you to investigate, adjust, or at least address the situation. Because sometimes frequencies clash and it can feel like tension or heaviness or resistance. Often it just feels like something is off. So we all have these internal compasses, and we're going to talk about number one, when you're on appointments, what do you do to realign when you feel dissonance? And we're also going to talk about what we can do to create resonance when we go on our appointments. What are the things we can do to create vibration matching with the person that we're meeting with? So resonance is when we meet with others and we have alignment and flow. The energy is matching. Dissonant, not that one person has bad energy. That's not what this is at all. Dissonance is just when energies are misaligned. And it is a note from our energy telling us something needs to be adjusted. But both resonance and dissonance can be super helpful guides. That's why we say it's like a compass. So we notice in music when there's harmony and dissonance. So resonance is when there's beautiful music played and it's just wonderful to your ears. But when you hear a clashing note, that's an example of dissonance. The frequencies are not in tune. The same applies to us as humans. Humans in general like harmony. That is why everybody has this ability to tune into the energy of the people they're meeting. We're inclined towards resonance because it feels safe and harmonious and efficient. When we encounter dissonance, meaning something feels off, this creates a sense of tension or instability, and our nervous system pushes us, either consciously or unconsciously, toward resolving that feeling. So the sensations that you feel when you feel like something is off. So we're going to talk about different ways in which you can sense that something might be off and that the energies are misaligned. One is just a feeling, the sensations of your body. So maybe you feel a heaviness or a constriction, like you just don't feel good, a stomach ache. Whereas when everything's in alignment and you feel in harmony, you feel light and warmth and expansion. You can also see energy. Oftentimes in our business or in life, we can see visual signs. And often the visual signs carry more truth than the verbal ones. Like I said, somebody can tell you all kinds of things, but you can see through their posture, their eye contact, their body language, that the energy has shifted. So when using your compass with your relationships or going on appointments, working with buyers and sellers, you got to pay attention to how you're feeling. You must pay attention to your surroundings and notice. You have to pay attention to your gut. Your gut processes faster than your conscious brain, so it's important to listen to it. The gut is that instant yes or no feeling that you get, or you have subconscious pattern recognition. Trust your early reads on things. Also, we hear energy, tone of voice. So when somebody's speaking, for example, they may be saying one thing, but their tone in which they say it is telling you more than the words themselves. So pay attention in your conversations to tone, pacing, volume, and any emotional undertones you might pick up on. Also, pay attention to sensing emotion. You can catch emotional energy in a room, so be intentional about what you absorb. Emotions ripple outward. Pay attention when you're meeting with a customer, for example, what their emotions are telling you. Are they bringing joy or anger to a meeting? And then read the environment. Certain places you'll just feel different. So certain places feel good and some places feel off immediately as soon as you enter the space. So all spaces hold an energetic imprint. So that's why light, space, order matters. History lingers in environments. So let's go back to why we notice these things as humans, as when you're on an appointment, and even though the customer is telling you all the things you want to hear, something feels off. You don't feel good. You walk out and you say, nope, something's off. That is because a few reasons. First of all, our biological drive for homeostasis or balance. Our bodies are wired to maintain internal balance. So when we subconsciously pick up dissonance, whether it's an emotion that we notice, it ends up registering as a disturbance, and our brain wants to resolve the disturbance. This can trigger subtle behavioral shifts. So maybe you notice that the person has changed their body language, or they have their arms crossed, or they're scowling and don't realize it. We want to restore the internal harmony for ourselves. Also, beyond our homeostasis, our brain is always processing. So there is discomfort when actions, beliefs, or environment clash. So think about this in the terms of somebody you're meeting with, and all their words seem to say what you want them to say, but they are not making eye contact. That could be because there is a disconnect between what is being said and the energy that they're feeling. Their thoughts are not connected. Their thoughts and energy are not connected with the words they say. Now, anytime somebody feels a disconnect or dissonance, what will typically happen is that person is either going to adapt and change their perception in order to, they too want to be in alignment. So think of this in terms of a customer that you're sitting with, and they want to feel just like you prefer balance and homeostasis. That is true for them as well. So they are either going to, if they feel off, that for whatever reason, they will either begin to change their perception, or they're going to change their behavior. In other words, they could go to another real estate agent because they prefer the feeling of the balance. Why do we want to feel this balance so much? Well, some of it has to do with evolution. So in over the times of evolution, resonance feels safe. So when people resonated, or their vibration was aligned with their group's mood, behavior, or energy, that meant that they were accepted into the group. And when you're accepted into the group in the time of cavemen, for example, that also meant protection, that you were now part of something bigger, which signaled that you were safe. So we have carried that wiring forward. So resonance feels safe. Dissonance feels risky. Dissonance feels like we're on an island by ourselves. Lastly, resonance. Resonance is when you feel aligned. When energies are aligned, there's not as much energetic output. In other words, it feels good. There's no work involved. Whereas dissonance, you feel like you're swimming upstream. It demands more energy, so we instinctively try to shift towards having alignment. Humans adapt to reduce their dissonance in several ways. So we can adjust ourselves, we can change tone, body language, or word choice to match our environment, or we can change the environment. In my opinion, the reason why sometimes real estate professionals go on an appointment and think that they have the client, that person's signing everything with them, is because the words that client may have said indicated one thing, and the agent chose to choose the words over the energy that they were feeling. Because almost always, when you get down to it, the agent says, I felt something was off. So it's important to correct dissonance when you feel it, because from the other side of that, when the other person feels dissonance, what is most likely going to happen if it is not resolved is they're going to select a different environment, which means a different real estate professional. So let's talk about skills for reading energy. So first, in order to notice or to read energy in general. And by the way, most real estate agents don't go into a meeting saying, okay, I have to stop and think about the energy. But should you? I would. I think it's important to show up and think about the energy and notice the energy, because there are steps you can take. Number one, to create resonance, but also there are steps that when you notice dissonance, that you can make a difference. You can change it. You can realign so that the other person feels comfortable and so that you're both in an energetic alignment to get the transaction or to get the relationship back on track. So first, pause and notice. First impressions of energy are often the most accurate. So when you show up at a meeting, maybe it's a listing appointment or a new buyer, stop and just notice for a second. Feel for a minute, not even a minute. Feel for 10 seconds and see what you feel. Notice the sensations. Don't rush past this. Don't head right into your presentation. Just stop and notice. Observe. Look around. Listen. Feel. Compare signals. So human beings are constantly transmitting signals, energetic signals. Some of that is words. Some of that is body cues. Some of it is the tone of voice. Some of it's the environment. When you can get all of these aligned, it's pretty clear. But sometimes you're going to have mixed signals as well. That's why it's important to read them all. And then important to neutralize yourself first. So it's important to note when you're at an appointment or with somebody that first you have to make note of yourself and your own mood, your own emotion, because sometimes your own energy can distort your reading of somebody else's energy. So center yourself first, clear any bias, release any emotional charge, and just breathe for a second and begin to notice. Look for repeated signals throughout your meeting. So, for example, if somebody's body language is constantly off, that is a signal. Maybe they keep telling you one thing, but their body language is telling you something else. Notice and track those patterns. So where can we apply this energy reading? Well, number one, in relationships in general, any relationship with another person. Any relationship either builds resonance, or in relationships, can you have a relationship with somebody that you have dissonance with? 100%. You have to respect it, understand it, and know how to work with it. Also, there is dissonance and resonance when making decisions. So resonance helps you filter decisions. So if you're making a decision, but your decision doesn't feel good, that means there's dissonance. And so you can use that as a filter for choosing. Choose with resonance, avoid long term dissonance. Boundaries in general preserve your resonance and well being. So when you feel dissonance, action is required. What does this mean? Well, if you have relationships with certain people where you can always feel a disconnect in energy, that there's dissonance, that their energy is just different than your energy. Again, this is not a judgment by any means. It's not good and bad energy. It can be two great energies, but there is a conflict between the energies. When there are relationships that you have that consistently you feel the conflict or the tension between the energies, set boundaries around that relationship so that you can manage the dissonance. Let's talk about resonance and dissonance specifically as it applies to real estate. Okay, first, you've been on an appointment, you went on a listing presentation, and the person said all the right things. They were referred to you. If you were to judge by the words alone, you know that they're going to hire you. They're going to sign the dotted line. But something didn't feel right. So, what happens when you're at an appointment and something is just not feeling right? This is where you must pause, diagnose the dissonance, figure out, why am I feeling this way? Why is this energy feel off? And then retune. So, first, oops. Um, Pause and notice. So we said in general, once you go to an appointment, take a minute and just pause and notice. But specifically, when you're at an appointment and you notice something is off, pause for a second. Notice, try to put words to what you're noticing. Maybe it's the person's body language, their crossed arms, their short answers, their change in tone, their lack of eye contact. Then, just like we said a few minutes ago, when you show up in an appointment, stop and just check your own state. Sometimes the dissonance is coming from you. Maybe you're feeling it because of the energy that's coming off you. Are you stressed? Are you rushing? And then resist the urge to fill the space with more talking. The silence for even 10 seconds at your appointment is going to give you data. So pause and notice and take in the data. Then identify the source. Is it an emotion that's coming off the other person? Is it informational? Maybe something you said caused them to feel overwhelmed or confused. Is it the environment? Maybe the energy that you're feeling is that they're uncomfortable. Maybe the environment's too loud, they can't hear you. Maybe there's too much distraction with other family members buzzing around the house. Maybe the phone keeps ringing. So diagnose if it maybe it's just an environmental issue. And maybe you could say, you know what? I noticed you had a lovely table out on your back patio. Can we go step out there and get some fresh air, and I'll go through the rest of the appointment? Or is it just energy in general? Personalities not syncing. Maybe you have competing agendas. First, identify the source. And this is all while you're doing your actual presentation. Next, shift your energy first. So, in order to lead somebody else's energy, first you'll need to shift your energy. Soften your tone. Oftentimes, when we get nervous and we detect a dissonance, we start speaking louder or faster because it's almost like a desperation. I can feel the energy is off, so I'm going to try really hard to get it back. But you don't want to get louder. You don't want to get faster. You want to slow it down, breathe, soften your tone, lean in, and match their pace of speaking and body language. Lower your voice and your volume, and then re-engage the person with curiosity. So instead of just pushing through your script, knowing that there's some sort of energy mismatch here, stop for a second and just ask a question. Hey, before we keep going, is there something I could clarify or address better for you? Or let's take a step back and make sure we're on the same page. Sometimes I go really fast. What can I go through again just to explain it a little bit better? Adjust the flow of energy. So sometimes just adjusting the flow. Maybe you were sitting across from the person, just sitting side by side can shift the flow of energy. Maybe you've been showing or just using words, you could now switch to visual aids. That's going from somebody having to listen to somebody looking at something. So that shifts the flow of energy. And also think about how you can reduce complexity. Oftentimes, energy gets jumbled up when somebody is faced with what in their mind is chaos, which can be some of the information that we're presenting to them. The chaos, we're bringing the chaos, meaning maybe we're the ones creating chaos and fear in that person. So reduce as much as you can, reduce the complexity and create clarity for the person. And then re-anchor the conversation with your shared goal. Resonance returns when the shared purpose becomes the focal point again. So, know when to pause. Occasionally, you're going to be at a meeting. Maybe it's just so much distraction that you can tell the person is just not listening and not engaging at all. It is okay to say, I understand right now might not be the best time to make a big decision. Do you want to regroup when you have fresh energy and you have time to absorb everything? Dissonance signals potential challenges that can cost time, energy, and even reputation if ignored. I think oftentimes real estate agents ignore the dissonance. They can feel it at the appointment, but they choose to just ignore it, thinking if I just power through this, I'm going to get the listing. But there's a cost to just powering through and ignoring that dissonance. And remember, dissonance is not inherently bad. I don't want it to sound like there's good energy and bad energy, and this person has bad energy, so it's not a good match. It's not that at all. It's just that something is off. Two good energies cannot match or not align, and you want to figure out where that mismatch is. Now, how can we create resonance when we're on appointments? Well, this is when everything aligns, the energy feels good. When we have resonance with somebody, the client trusts more, they stress less, and they become a referral source. So how can we create resonance when we are heading into a meeting? Well, first, arrive centered. So don't arrive late that you have to run in, you don't have time to think or pause. Take 30 to 60 seconds before the meeting to slow your breath, drop your stress, and set an intention for connecting with the person. Mirror the client's pace and tone and body language. Match their energy. If they're calm and quiet, then you be calm and quiet and match what they're doing. Use small talk to build safety, common ground, maybe shared experiences, a story. Maybe you can talk about how you know each other or a person that you know in common. Start that way. Reference something personal that maybe you know from the past. Maybe they're a past customer. Start there. Maintain an open posture, eye contact, and a warm tone, because these all signal trustworthy energy. Listen to frequency. Pay attention to what they're not saying. Pauses, hesitation, sighs, or shifts in their expression. And reflects back their own language. So something that they say over and over, you say it over and over too, because remember, words are energy too. Let them feel heard before you offer any solutions. Then connect emotionally, share enthusiasm for their goals, Use storytelling to evoke positive emotions. Maybe tell a story of another past client who went through this same scenario and how they ended up. And avoid rushing. Resonance grows in micro pauses where people can feel connected. And then utilize the environment. Sit somewhere, like I said, maybe it's outside. You notice they have a nice little table out on the patio. Sit out there and talk. Sit by side instead of across from each other, which is you sit across from an opponent, you sit next to somebody that you're problem solving with together. And then remove any physical or psychological barriers. So, for example, you don't want to have a laptop in between the two of you because that is blocking the energy. And then always end on a high frequency note. Summarize what was accomplished and next steps in an upbeat and confident tone. Reaffirm your excitement about working with the person and leave them feeling really reassured and not pressured. So, go into every meeting using your energy compass. Choose resonance when you're making decisions and limit dissonance. When you're negotiating on a transaction, think about how you can become a better negotiator by utilizing and reading the energy of the other person that you're negotiating against in a transaction. Tailor your presentation style to build connection. So, for example, maybe the first 20 minutes of your meeting is just a walk around the property with the person next to you so you can begin building that energy connection. When you feel something that's off, address it and realize that energy is part of every conversation that you're having. Remember, the energy of the mind is the essence of life. And as always, you can get our past versions of Quantum Sparks at laerrealty.com/quantum sparks. And if there's something you want us to address in future classes, go to laerrealty.com/ask anything. Thanks, everyone.